Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today I'm going to show you one of those really off-the-tour-out spaces that's only on second deck. It's pretty accessible as far as some of the places we go goes. This is the Nixie room. The AN SPQ 25 Nixie is a towed array defense against torpedoes. We'll talk more about that as we go through. I am right around frame 212, so we are just about as far aft on the ship as you can go. The flight deck is a little bit ahead of us, and to my right here is the AFFF mixing station for flight deck firefighting foam. And all of this area used to be the magazines and things like that for the 40mm guns that were at the fantail of the ship, and also the crane machinery room. And I'll show you that here in a second. Now, as we go into this room, there is extremely low headroom, probably the lowest on second deck. And that is because of the 40mm gun tubs in the back of the ship that are sunk into it. So here is the original rotating mechanism for that 40mm gun, and then all of this was the 18-foot diameter tub. And you can see the frames back here. Because we're at the back of the ship, the frame spacing is closer to 2 feet rather than 4 feet. You can see that it's gotten much closer together. But this space is basically just dead space that accesses the Nixie room. So I am standing roughly center line at the extreme aft end of the ship here. You can see that the deck on this side has the static-proof rubberized linoleum that you see associated with electrical equipment, and then there's this sheet metal breakwater that was welded in the 80s, and on this side is poured terrazzo because it can get wet. As the Iowas go at speed, their sterns tend to drop in the water, which would put these second deck openings very close to the water, especially with the rooster tail that they can sometimes spit up. So they don't want that water just flooding the whole space, so the breakwater here tries to contain it on this side of the electrical equipment and keep all the electricity on that side of the water. You can also see in the overheads the cutouts from those gun tubs. And we've even got some weld marks in the overhead here, and notice how reinforced this framing is. Look at the size of that framing. This is where the old crane at the fantail was mounted. So it sat on this heavy framing, and the equipment, the winch equipment, would have been down here. So in 1982, when that crane is removed and they replace it with the boat boom on the port side of the superstructure, they instead turn this into the Nixie room. So Nixie is a towed array countermeasure for torpedoes. Battleship New Jersey, like other large capital ships, is extremely vulnerable to significantly smaller, cheaper submarines. And those submarines could attack us without us even knowing they're there. We've got no sonar. There's no point in putting sonar on something this big and loud, because we wouldn't be able to hear anything. And we've got no anti-submarine weapons at all. No torpedoes, no depth charges, nothing like that. Iowa-class battleships never did. Our embarked aircraft might have. There is a bomb magazine for the float planes that may have contained depth charges during World War II, and we would have carried helicopters during the 1980s, which could have been equipped with anti-submarine torpedoes, sonobuoys, and magnetic anomaly detectors, which is another dipping array. So really, our only defense against submarines is if we get a warning from another ship that they hear a torpedo launch, or we see the wake of a torpedo in the water, we can use the Nixie to try and detect it. Basically, you're just putting out a little torpedo-shaped thing on the end of a really long cable. And that is putting out a signal that is trying to mimic the ship's own sound. So these acoustic homing torpedoes here two big metal objects moving through the water, and they go for Nixie and blow up the cheap little toad thing, as opposed to going for the ship's propellers and completely disabling us, or going under the ship and exploding under our keel, which is what a lot of modern torpedoes are designed to do, which this ship probably couldn't survive that well. Interestingly, before we keep going about Nixie, you can see another countermeasure back here, a World War II era one. You notice these spools of 440 voltage cables coming through? Those are the MF and Q coils for our degaussing equipment, which leak an electric charge into the hull that cancels out the magnetic field of the ship so that magnetic torpedoes or mines aren't going to detect the ship. So we've got protection against acoustic, which is a much more modern defense, and a World War II era protection against magnetic, which in some of these exterior spaces here on second deck, you can see that wrap around. So, while we're back here for the fun of it, let's open up this door and just see what you can see through here. Yeah. All right, so you can see we've got the double drum cable roll here. It goes up through this, and then there's a channel where it can run down to the ocean. We're sitting at least 10 feet higher in the water than we would have fully loaded. And if you look at a picture of the back of the ship, these are directly below the nameplate. So the name New Jersey is right above me, just a couple of feet. So to give you an idea of the size of the Nixie, you've got these mounted right next to the opening. So in an emergency, you drop that, you take this, you truck it out, you play it out. If it gets destroyed by a torpedo, ain't no big thing, you got some more stored right here. You've also got your own air conditioning unit back here. Not entirely sure. I guess this room would have been pretty continuously manned if there's air conditioning back here, but there is zero insulation. Nothing on the overhead. There would have been a wood deck there, but nothing on the bulkheads around this space. So this is just brute forcing it into this small room. More modern ships still carry one or two Nixies, depending on the size of the ship. New Jersey has two openings. Most smaller ships have one. And there is also a couple of successor things, decoys that do more or less the same thing in development right now, but I don't think any have been deployed. Aircraft carriers have started being seen deployed with, they look like old torpedo launchers that shoots a counter torpedo out. It's a relatively new technology, and I'm not particularly familiar with it. But whereas our stuff is pretty much entirely passive, we tow it out there and hope that the decoy goes for us, modern large ships that still suffer from the same issues might have a more active defense now. If we find out more about that in the future, we'll let you know in a future video. Do you think Battleship New Jersey was equipped with enough decoys and sensors and things to be competitive in a modern battlefield? Modern as in the 1980s when she was reactivated, or even modern for today? Are there new technologies you would like to see added if the ship was reactivated? Let us know in the comments section down below. If you've got any questions about this for me personally, there's a link in the description below to my Facebook page. Go ahead and check that out. Make sure you use the link and don't just search for me on Facebook, because if you try to send me a friend request and I don't know you, I'm not going to accept it. But if you come and join me on my page, and we can talk there. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate the support you guys have given us. There's a link in the description for ways you can donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.